Want to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you so much for all of the continued support. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done listening to The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. This is Abercrombie's second standalone book in the First Law series, and I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was just right now. So, I love this thing. This book is absolutely incredible. I am going to give it an crazy easy 5 out of 5. And honestly, you know, it might be my favorite First Law book that I've read. This is not my first time reading this book. I read the entire 9-book First Law series a couple years ago, and I did them all in audiobook because I just am in love with this audiobook narrator, Stephen Pacey. I've read probably about 175 audiobooks now, or listened to, or whatever you want to say. People get mad when I say I read them. I've listened to 175 audiobooks or so, and Stephen Pacey's by far my favorite. Maybe not by far, but solidly my favorite. And so I'm definitely going to do them again in an audiobook. But I listened to them all, and the scores that I gave them is I gave like a 4 to the first book, and then a 5 and a 5 to wrap up the first trilogy. And then I think I gave like 3 4s to the 3 standalones, or maybe 4.5 in one of them, maybe 3.5 for Red Country, but you know, definitely below 5. And then I gave 5s to the final trilogy. But I'm liking them all, with exception of the third book, which I thought was so high up in my favorite tiers list that I couldn't possibly like it more. But I've liked them all, the first 2, and then the first standalone, much more than I liked the first time. I gave the first book, the first standalone, Best Served Cold, which is going to hopefully turn into a movie soon, a 5 out of 5. And now this one. And I missed something when I read this the first time. And I think what happened was I didn't pay as close enough attention as I should have. This book is about a 3-day-long battle, and a little bit of the lead up to the battle, and then a decent amount of wrapping it up after the battle's done. But it's really about this 3-day-long battle between the Union, which is, I don't want to say the good guys, because there are no good guys in any of these books, but the side that most of the protagonists come from the initial series, and the North, which is the barbarian type people that you also know and love. But they come to a fight over this area called the Heroes, which is a hill with some like Stonehenge monuments on top of it. And they're fighting for the North and, you know, over a land dispute, which is essentially what all wars are essentially about. And the first time I listened to it, though, I didn't pay close enough attention to the battle itself. I got lost. And it's partially because I did it on audiobook, where if I was reading it in regular book format, I would have been looking at the map more. I would have been paying closer attention to where the characters are and what's going on. And then when we jump, because there's, you know, I think 5 or 6 different point of views, maybe 6, that there's a decent amount of time in between when you get to see each person, and then you can kind of forget where they're at and what's happening. And so I committed that when I read this one, I would do it more carefully. I would, when I was done on a car ride or something, I'd go kind of look at the map and take it in and visualize it. And so I had more intention when I went into this one, and it helped a lot. And what ended up happening was, instead of using my brain power to try to focus on where are people, what's going on exactly, and visualizing everything, what happened was I was able to focus on the little things. I was able to pay attention to the character dynamics more and appreciate them more. And it just made so much difference, because the character work here is absolutely perfect. And I don't say that lightly. I can be critical of character work. I think Abercrombie's among the best, but this has got to be his best character work. Every character is just absolute gold. And the way that they are able to communicate these things to the people around them, the fact that they're in this battle constantly and the stress involved with it, and the political dynamics that are constantly going on, it feels like I just read almost like a series wrapped up into one decently sized book. So I just loved it. So before we go into, more about the plot and the characters and the things that I loved in particular about this, we need to talk about the sponsor of this video. So, have you ever Googled yourself and you're shocked to see your personal information just exposed on one of those public listing sites? I looked myself up right before I shot this video, and not only did I find my address and my phone number, but I literally found my exact salary at my job. It was kind of freaky. And what's happening behind the scenes is these data brokers are out there, and they're making a fortune selling your information to robocallers and spammers and others who want to learn more about you, like where you live. Now, Aura, the sponsor of this video, can identify data brokers exposing your info and submit opt-out requests on your behalf to these, dozens and dozens of different sites. So the brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but they make it super hard to do. So let Aura handle that for you. Aura also does so much more to protect you and your family from online threats that you can't see. It's really easy to set up, so you don't have to download several different apps to get things like parental controls and antivirus and VPN and password management and identity theft insurance and more. You get everything at one affordable price. You can either let people continue to exploit and profit off your personal information, or you can go to www.aura.com/fantasybook to start your 2-week free trial, also linked below in the description. So let us move on now to the various aspects of this book. Let's start with world building, as we always start with. Now, it's hard to say that this book had awesome world building, right? Because everything takes place on a battlefield and 2 different sides of this battlefield. So it's not ingenious work here to craft this world, and it's not meant to. And it's just supposed to feel like a old, school battleground, and not in the World War I and II sense where there's bombs and guns flying all over the place, but in the old school sense, the medieval sense of people charging at each other with whatever they've got in their hands and hacking away at each other, and archers and, that medieval, old school England versus France kind of feel to it. And it does it masterfully. But so yeah, the world is narrow as it gets. Now, when we get to the fantasy elements, also very little of that in this book, even less than the other books. Now, the first law is kind of known for having it's very, very light on the magic. Now, there are some magical elements to it, or some fantasy elements to it, where you've got, the 𝐒𝐿𝐴, which are like these, beast-like creatures. You've got 𝐬𝐻𝑆, who's this magician who doesn't use his power much, but that he is magical. I mean, one of the whole quests of the second book is to get this powerful magical item. But it's very much light on the fantasy. But thinking about this one, was there any fantasy or magic or anything in it? I don't think there was. I mean, 𝐬𝐻𝑆 is in it, but he just makes like a cannon. He doesn't actually do anything magical. I honestly don't think there was a single shred of magical element or fantasy element even to any of this, other than the fact that this is all made up. And, one of the definitions of a fantasy world is when it's not real. And so, yeah, it's that. And it's definitely a fantasy book. It's a fantasy series. But yeah, you're not going to don't go into this thinking you're going to get magic flinging or anything even remotely close to that, because that's not what you're going to get. But what you are going to get, and the hero of this story, is the characters themselves. The story is told through 6 different point of view characters. So let me go through. Now, on the northern side of this conflict, and this is like the barbarian types, you've got 𝐿𝐴. He's the leader of a crew of, they call them named men, but like a small crew of these Northmen. And he's known as like a super straight edge kind of guy. You've got Prince Calder. He is 𝗏𝘅𝑒's younger son. 𝗏𝘅𝑒 is I don't want to say who he is because it might ruin something in the first series, but if you've read, you know who that is. But he's the younger son. He has an older son named 𝐒𝐿, but he's this charmer and schemer, but very bad at the fighting aspect of being a Northman. And then you've got Beck. He's this 17 or 16-year-old, and his father was a famous champion, and he wants to go off and prove himself and become a hero like his dad was. Now, on the Union side, the southern side, you've got Bremer Dan Gorst. And he was the king's bodyguard, and now he's this special observer on the war, constantly writing to the close council, updating everybody about what's going on. And he is a badass. He is a one-man wrecking crew, but he's got this. And one of the many reasons that the audio version is so good is that he's like this super tough guy, but he's got this super high-pitched voice. Comes off very disarming, but he's like crazy fearsome. And then you've got Finri Dan Brock. She's a Union noblewoman, and she's got super ambitious plans and wants to, take her husband and make him a lot more powerful than he is. And, the power person in this couple. And then you've got Corporal Tunney, and he is the standard bearer of the 1st Division, is a division, and he's a veteran Union soldier. And, out of all these, Tunney stands out. Tunney, who I don't think showed up in any of the original books, and I don't think he shows up in a book after this, steals the show, even though he's not in it a terrible amount. Now, maybe I bet everybody that reads these books, and that's a sign of a good book, is when everybody's got a different favorite character. And that you found that a lot in the first series. You find these people saying that their favorite characters, although a lot of people will pick Glokta or Logan, you've got a lot of people that pick these kind of side characters and go, no, that's my favorite person. And, I feel like that with Tunney in this one. Because he's this cynical soldier who makes you just smile the whole time. He's made a profession out of being a corporal. He does not want to advance because he knows that would get him in actual danger. He is like this amazing gambler who's swindling money off his group the entire time. He has these amazing little quirks, like he can sleep literally anywhere. He's never uncomfortable. He just makes it work, and he's so desperately trying to stay out of harm's way and keep his crew out of harm's way. And I think they're actually a cavalry regiment that doesn't have any horses, but they have the mind of a cavalry unit, so they're not going to name themselves infantry. It's awesome. The other area that this book excels, and all Abercrombie books excel at this, is the prose. The prose is S-class, S+. It doesn't get a lot better than this. Now, it's not this prose of it's not what I would call like purple prose. You're not going to get some guy Gabriel K in here. But it's beautifully written. It's magical in the way that he just makes you feel the emotions going on with these characters. It's not poetic, but it's real, and it's gritty and funny. But not funny in the, that's the most hysterical thing I've ever read, but this grim, gallows humor constantly throughout it. And just puts a smile on your face. And that's what I want out of prose. That's all I need. And there's a reason so many people are addicted to Abercrombie, and prose is kind of top of the list. Prose and characters. So, there are faults here. It's a very narrow scope. The plot is good. There's good scheming here. There's good politics here. But it's a battle. But it's the little things that make this so special, and might cement it as my favorite First Law book. And now I have 4 more to go as my reread. Maybe I'm going to love those even more than I did the first time, but god dang, Abercrombie's so good. So who do I recommend this to? Well, you could read this as a standalone. You could read it without reading any other First Law. I don't think you should. I think you should read them in order. You could skip Best Served Cold, but why would you? It's good. I mean, there's a couple little loose references to it, but, one of the characters had a decent showing in it, but not much. I mean, you could do without it. But read them all. But if you've read First Law, I think there's a lot of people that read the First Law trilogy and went, I don't need to read the standalones. You are missing out. You are doing yourself a major disservice. And if you're one of those people being like, I just haven't started the First Law yet, get on it. It's, Tide is my second favorite fantasy series I've ever read after Malazan, and right up there with Dandelion Dynasty. But it's incredible. And I recommend it to everybody that can handle a little more grim story. It's considered grimdark, where there's not a lot of hope in the world. Nothing good's going to happen. But it is a good time. But it's not like that hardcore, constantly bloody, dark, rapes and murders. And it's good old-fashioned killing, but in the professional sense. So it's awesome. Check it out. you know, I think this book is far underappreciated when it comes to the First Law series as a whole. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching this review, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, Gregory, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝐿, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, Tay C, Tahir, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Fanixan, Harry B, Joe, Cat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Philippe, Sky, TW57, Wacky, and Zion. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.